What happens when a live television interview spirals completely out of control? When a guest refuses to play by the rules and a host pushes just one question too far? The Today Show has seen its share of awkward moments over the years. But nothing could have prepared viewers for what unfolded when Adam Lambert sat down for what was supposed to be a routine promotional interview. This wasn't just an uncomfortable exchange or a tense moment that producers could cut to commercial. This was a full-scale confrontation that left the studio audience gasping, social media exploding, and everyone asking the same question. How did a simple interview turn into one of the most talked-about moments in morning television history? Before we get into exactly what went down, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and drop a comment below, telling me what you think about celebrity interviews gone wrong. Have you ever seen a guest completely lose it on live TV? Let me know your thoughts. Now let's get into what actually happened during this interview, because trust me, you need to hear every single word of this exchange. The interview started innocently enough. Adam Lambert walked onto the set, greeted the host with a handshake, and settled into the chair across from the desk. The studio lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and millions of viewers were tuning in from home, expecting nothing more than a pleasant conversation about his latest project. The host opened with a smile, the kind of practiced warmth that morning show hosts have perfected over years of early call times and celebrity small talk. "Adam, thank you so much for being here with us this morning," the host began, her voice cheerful and light. "We're so excited to talk to you about everything you've been working on." "Thanks for having me," Adam replied, his tone friendly but measured. There was something in his expression, a slight guardedness that suggested he was already anticipating where this conversation might go. "So let's jump right in," the host continued, leaning forward slightly. "You've been in the public eye for a long time now, and you've always been someone who speaks their mind. That's something a lot of people admire about you. But I have to ask, do you ever worry that being so outspoken might alienate some of your fans?" Adam's smile tightened just a fraction. "I think authenticity is more important than trying to please everyone," he said carefully. "I've never been interested in being someone I'm not just to make people comfortable." Of course," the host nodded, though there was a certain edge creeping into her voice. "But there's a difference between being authentic and being controversial, isn't there? I mean, some people might say that you court controversy deliberately." The atmosphere in the studio shifted. It was subtle at first. Just a slight change in Adam's posture, a flicker of something in his eyes. "I'm not sure I understand what you're getting at," he said, his voice still polite but noticeably cooler. "Well," the host pressed on, seemingly oblivious to or deliberately ignoring the warning signs, "you've been involved in several public disagreements over the years, social media feuds, controversial performances, statements that have divided your fan base. Some people wonder if that's just who you are, or if it's part of a calculated strategy to stay relevant." There it was, the question that crossed the line from interview to interrogation. Adam's jaw tightened, and for a moment he said nothing. The silence stretched out, uncomfortable and charged, as cameras continued to roll and the studio audience held its collective breath. "I'm sorry," Adam finally said, his voice quiet but carrying an unmistakable edge. "Are you seriously asking me if I create controversy as a career strategy?" The host's smile remained fixed, but there was uncertainty flickering behind her eyes now. "I'm just asking what a lot of people are wondering," she said, attempting to maintain her composure. "It's a fair question." "Is it, though?" Adam leaned forward, his entire demeanor changing. "Is it fair to suggest that everything I do is calculated for attention? That when I speak up about things that matter to me, things that affect my community, that I'm just trying to stay relevant?" "I didn't mean to imply," the host started, but Adam wasn't finished. "No, let's be clear about what you're implying," he cut in, his voice rising slightly. "You're suggesting that my activism, my willingness to speak truth to power, my refusal to stay quiet about discrimination and inequality, that all of that is just a publicity stunt. Is that what you're saying?" The host shifted in her chair, clearly realizing that this interview had taken a turn she hadn't anticipated. "Adam, I think you're misunderstanding my question. I'm simply trying to have a conversation about your public persona." "My public persona," Adam repeated, and there was something almost dangerous in the way he said it. "You mean the fact that I'm a gay man who refuses to hide or apologize for who I am? Is that the persona you're talking about?" "That's not what I said," the host protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "But it's what you meant," Adam shot back. "See, here's the thing about these kinds of interviews. Hosts like you dress up these loaded questions in concern and curiosity. But what you're really doing is asking me to justify my existence. You're asking me to explain why I won't just sit down, shut up, and be grateful for whatever scraps of acceptance society decides to throw my way." The tension in the studio was palpable now. Camera operators glanced at each other nervously. The producers in the control room were undoubtedly panicking, trying to decide whether to cut to commercial or let this play out. The host's professional mask was slipping, replaced by genuine discomfort. "I think you're reading too much into my question," she said, attempting to regain control of the conversation. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You immediately jump to the most extreme interpretation." "Do I?" Adam's voice was sharp now, all pretense of politeness abandoned. "Because from where I'm sitting, you just accused me of manufacturing controversy for attention, and now you're upset that I'm calling you out on it. That's not me being extreme. That's me refusing to let you get away with a cheap shot disguised as journalism." The host's face flushed. "I'm trying to conduct a professional interview here." "Are you?" Adam challenged. "Because a professional interview would involve actual questions about my work, my music, the projects I'm here to promote. Instead, you've decided to use your platform to question my integrity and suggest that my advocacy is somehow disingenuous. That's not professional. That's personal." "You agreed to come on this show," the host said, her own frustration beginning to show. "If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't do interviews." And there it was, the moment when the host made her fatal mistake. Adam's eyes narrowed, and when he spoke again his voice was ice cold. "Tough questions," he repeated slowly. "You think that was a tough question? Let me tell you what a tough question actually is. A tough question would be asking me about the challenges of maintaining artistic integrity in an industry that constantly tries to sand down your edges. A tough question would be asking me how I balance commercial success with staying true to my values. A tough question would be asking me about the responsibility that comes with having a platform and using it to speak for people who don't have one. What you asked me wasn't tough. It was lazy. It was insulting, and frankly, it was beneath both of us." The host opened her mouth to respond, but Adam wasn't giving her the chance. "And before you say I'm being defensive or sensitive or whatever other dismissive label you want to slap on this," he continued, "I want you to understand something. I've been doing interviews for over 15 years. I've sat across from journalists who actually know how to do their jobs, who come prepared, who ask challenging questions that make me think and give viewers real insight. You know what those interviews have in common? They treat me like a human being, not a soundbite waiting to happen." The studio audience was completely silent now. This had gone so far beyond awkward television. This was raw, unfiltered confrontation playing out in real time, and no one knew quite how to react. "I don't think that's fair," the host managed, her voice strained. "You want to talk about fair?" Adam leaned back in his chair, but there was nothing relaxed about his posture. "Let's talk about how many times you've asked straight artists if they're courting controversy when they speak their minds. Let's talk about how many times you've questioned whether their activism is genuine or just a publicity stunt. I'm going to guess that number is pretty close to 0. The host's expression hardened. "I ask all my guests challenging questions regardless of who they are." "Really?" Adam's eyebrows shot up. "So when you had that action star on last month talking about his charity work, did you ask him if he was only doing it for good press? When that pop singer came on to discuss her mental health advocacy, did you suggest she was manufacturing a persona? Or is it just me who gets the special treatment?" The host's jaw clenched. "I resent the implication that I'm singling you out. And I resent being treated like my entire existence is up for debate," Adam fired back. "But here we are." There was a moment of tense silence. The host glanced toward the cameras, then back at Adam, clearly trying to figure out how to salvage this situation. When she spoke again, there was a defensive edge to her voice. "I'm just doing my job, Adam. If you have a problem with the questions, maybe the issue isn't with me. Maybe it's with how you're perceiving things." Adam let out a short, bitter laugh. "Oh, so now we're going with the gaslighting approach. Classic. Tell the person who's upset that they're overreacting, that they're too sensitive, that the problem is their perception and not your actions." "That's not what I'm doing," the host insisted, but her voice wavered. "Isn't it, though?" Adam leaned forward again, his gaze intense. "You asked me an inflammatory question. I called you out on it. And now you're trying to make it seem like I'm the unreasonable one. That's textbook manipulation, and I'm not playing along." The host's composure was cracking visibly now. "You're twisting everything I'm saying." "No, I'm responding to what you're actually saying, not the sanitized version you're trying to pretend you meant." Adam's voice was steady but forceful. "This is what happens when you come at someone with bad faith questions. You don't get to backtrack and act shocked when they respond accordingly." "Bad faith?" The host's voice rose slightly. "I've been nothing but respectful." "Respectful," Adam repeated, shaking his head. "You call questioning someone's motives, their sincerity, their authenticity, respectful? That's an interesting definition of the word." The host took a breath, clearly trying to compose herself. "Look, we're obviously not going to agree on this. Can we move on to talking about your actual work?" "Oh, now you want to talk about my work?" Adam's tone was laden with sarcasm. "After spending the last several minutes implying that everything I do is calculated manipulation, now you want to have a normal conversation? That's not how this works." "I'm trying to give you an opportunity to discuss what you came here for," the host said, a pleading note creeping into her voice. "An opportunity," Adam echoed. "How generous of you. After ambushing me with loaded questions and then getting upset when I didn't just smile and take it, now you're offering me the chance to do what I was supposed to be here for in the first place. Do you see how backwards that is?" The host's frustration was becoming more apparent with every passing second. "You're making this much more difficult than it needs to be." "I'm making this difficult?" Adam's voice rose in disbelief. "You started this by questioning my integrity on live television, and I'm the one making it difficult? That's rich." "I was asking a legitimate question that viewers want answered," the host shot back, her carefully maintained professionalism finally crumbling. "People do wonder about these things." "What people?" Adam demanded. "Name them. Tell me exactly which people are sitting at home wondering if my activism is fake. Or is that just a convenient way for you to hide behind some imaginary audience concern so you can ask whatever inflammatory question pops into your head?" The host's mouth opened and closed, clearly not expecting to be challenged so directly. "I'm basing my questions on feedback we receive." "Feedback," Adam said flatly. "From where? Social media trolls? Anonymous comments? Or are you just using that as an excuse to justify your own preconceptions?" "I don't appreciate you attacking my credibility," the host said, her voice tight. "And I don't appreciate you attacking mine," Adam countered immediately. "But at least I'm being honest about it. You're trying to dress up your accusations in journalistic language, but we both know what's really happening here." The tension in the studio had reached a breaking point. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether to intervene or simply watch this train wreck unfold. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every uncomfortable second. "You know what the real problem is here?" Adam continued, not waiting for a response. "You came into this interview with a narrative already written in your head. You decided before I even sat down that I was going to be the controversial guest who courts attention. You weren't interested in an actual conversation. You wanted a confrontation, and then you're surprised when you got one." "That's completely unfair," the host protested. "I treat all my guests the same way." "Do you?" Adam's voice was sharp with challenge. "Because I've watched this show, I've seen how you interview other people. You laugh at their jokes, you ask them softball questions about their projects, you make them feel comfortable. But with me, you came out swinging. So either you're lying about treating everyone the same, or you genuinely don't see the difference in how you approach different guests." The host's face was flushed now, her discomfort radiating across the studio. I'm a professional journalist. I ask the questions that need to be asked. A professional journalist, Adam repeated, his tone dripping with skepticism. A professional journalist does research. They understand context. They know the difference between holding someone accountable and just stirring up controversy for ratings. What you did here today wasn't journalism. It was a hit job. A hit job? The host's voice cracked slightly. That's absurd. I invited you here to promote your work. And then immediately undermined that by attacking my character, Adam finished. You set this up to fail from the start, and now you're acting like I'm the unreasonable one for calling you out on it. There was a long pause. The host looked down at her notes, then back up at Adam, clearly grasping for some way to regain control of the situation. When she spoke again, her voice had taken on a more measured tone, though the underlying tension remained. I think we've gotten off track here. Can we please just have a civil conversation? Civil, Adam said softly, but there was steel in his voice. You want civility now. After you've spent the last 10 minutes questioning everything about me, now you want to be civil. Here's the thing about civility. It's a two-way street. You don't get to be hostile and then demand politeness in return. I wasn't being hostile, the host insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. Yes, you were, Adam said simply. Maybe you don't see it that way. Maybe in your mind you were just asking hard-hitting questions. But from where I'm sitting, from where anyone with eyes and ears is sitting, you were being hostile. And you know what? I'm not obligated to pretend otherwise just to make you comfortable. The host shook her head slowly. I honestly don't know what you want from me right now. I want you to acknowledge what you did, Adam said, his voice firm. I want you to admit that you came at me with preconceived notions and biased questions. I want you to recognize that the way you approached this interview was unfair and unprofessional. That's what I want. I can't do that, the host said quietly. I don't agree with your characterization of what happened here. Of course you don't, Adam said, a note of resignation creeping into his voice, because admitting that would mean admitting you were wrong, and people in your position rarely do that. It's easier to double down, to insist that the problem is with me and not with your approach. The host's expression hardened. I stand by my questions. Then I stand by my responses, Adam said evenly. And the viewers at home can decide for themselves who was in the wrong here. There was another long, uncomfortable silence. The host glanced at her producer off camera, clearly receiving some kind of direction, then turned back to Adam with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. We need to take a commercial break, she announced, her voice strained but attempting to sound normal. When we come back, we'll have more with Adam Lambert. Actually, Adam said, standing up from his chair, I don't think there's going to be any more. I'm done here. The host's eyes widened in shock. Wait, you can't just leave in the middle of an interview. Watch me, Adam said calmly, removing his microphone. The studio erupted into chaos. Producers were rushing onto the set. The host was calling after Adam, and the audience sat in stunned silence, unable to process what they were witnessing. But Adam remained completely calm, methodically unhooking himself from the audio equipment as if he had all the time in the world. Adam, please, the host said, her professional demeanor completely shattered now. Let's just talk about this. We can work this out. Adam paused, holding the microphone in his hand, and looked at her with an expression that was somehow both sympathetic and resolute. There's nothing to work out. You made your choices, I made mine. This is what happens when you treat people with disrespect. They stop tolerating it. I didn't disrespect you, the host said, her voice pleading now. I was just doing my job. Your job isn't to tear people down, Adam replied quietly. Your job is to inform, to enlighten, to give your audience insight into the people you interview. What you did today was none of those things. You used your platform to take shots at someone who came here in good faith, and now you're dealing with the consequences. A producer appeared at the edge of the set, gesturing frantically, but Adam ignored him. His focus remained on the host, whose expression had shifted from panic to something resembling genuine distress. This is going to look terrible, she said, almost to herself. People are going to think I drove you away. People are going to think whatever they think based on what actually happened here, Adam said. I'm not going to pretend this went well just to save your reputation. That's not my responsibility. But you're a professional, the host tried again, desperation creeping into her voice. Professionals finish what they start. Adam's laugh was short and humorless. Professionals also respect boundaries and treat their guests with basic human dignity. You forfeited any right to appeal to professionalism the moment you decided to ambush me with those questions. The host's eyes were shining now. Whether from anger or distress or both, it was impossible to tell. I never meant for this to happen. Didn't you, though? Adam asked, his voice softening slightly but losing none of its conviction. You asked those questions knowing they would provoke a response. You can't act surprised when the response isn't what you wanted. You thought, I would just laugh it off, give you some deflective answer that you could spin into a headline. But that's not who I am, and you should have known that before you started down this road. The host wiped at her eyes quickly, trying to maintain some semblance of composure. What do you want me to say? I want you to say what you actually mean, Adam replied. I want you to be honest about why you asked those questions, why you approached this interview the way you did. But I don't think you're ready to do that, and I'm not going to stand here and wait while you figure it out. He set the microphone down on the chair and turned toward the exit. The host called after him one more time. Adam, please, just give me 5 more minutes. Let me ask you about your music, about the actual reason you're here. We can salvage this. Adam stopped and turned back, his expression unreadable. You had your chance to ask me about my music. You had every opportunity to have a normal, productive conversation. You chose not to take it. I'm not giving you a do-over just because your first attempt blew up in your face. So that's it? The host asked, her voice small. You're just going to walk away? That's exactly what I'm going to do, Adam confirmed. And hopefully, you'll think about why that happened. Not just for the cameras, not just for the network, but for yourself. Think about what it means when someone would rather leave than continue talking to you. Think about what that says about how you conducted yourself here today. The host opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. I'm sorry, she finally said, the words barely audible. Adam studied her for a moment. Are you, though? Are you sorry for what you did? Or are you sorry that it didn't work out the way you planned? There's a difference. The host didn't answer, couldn't answer, and in that silence, Adam found his confirmation. That's what I thought, he said quietly. Good luck with the rest of your show. And with that, Adam Lambert walked off the Today Show set, leaving, behind a host struggling to compose herself, a crew scrambling to figure out what to do next, and an audience of millions who had just witnessed one of the most explosive interview meltdowns in morning television history. The cameras finally cut away, but the damage was done. What was supposed to be a simple promotional interview had turned into a masterclass in what happens when journalistic integrity takes a backseat to sensationalism, and when a guest refuses to play along with the game. The host sat alone at her desk, staring at the empty chair across from her, the weight of what had just transpired settling over the studio like a heavy fog. No amount of commercial breaks or damage control could erase what viewers had just seen. The truth had been laid bare in the most uncomfortable way possible, and there was no taking it back. In those final moments before they cut to commercial, as the host tried desperately to regain her composure, and the production team worked to contain the fallout, one thing became crystal clear. This wasn't just an interview gone wrong. This was a reckoning, a moment where the usual rules of celebrity journalism collided head-on with someone who refused to follow the script. And in that collision, the facade of polite morning television shattered completely, revealing the ugly reality that sometimes lies beneath the surface of these carefully choreographed conversations. So what do you think about what just went down? Was Adam right to walk off, or should he have stayed and tried to finish the interview? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we've got plenty more stories like this coming your way. Let me know, have you ever walked away from a situation that just felt wrong? Tell me about it in the comments.